Hi, I'm MADkurious, and this isn't your average how to grow flowers in Animal Crossing video. Instead of walking you through how to make hybrids, I'm going to show you 30 tips for everything you need to know in order to become an ACNH flower expert. I have 4 main sections in this tips and tricks guide: facts, obtaining, crossbreeding, and then cleanup. I created a flower core island over many months. It took me months. Every inch of the grass was covered in flowers. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and these tips should help you not make the same mistakes that I did. Which leads us to our first tip. There are 54 flowers in total. Decide how many of these you want on your island, what you're planning to do with them, or you can be like me and enjoy the journey figuring out what you'll do when you get there. Watch till the end to find out what I did with mine. Tip number 2, flowers will not grow on the sand. So they're a great place to keep buds if you need them for some reason. There's a really good tip later on that this will be related to if you need to separate out flowers that may not be useful to you. Also, it's just good to know because if you think that they're going to grow and you put a bunch of flowers there that you think are going to work, it's not going to work. You need to grow them on the grass. So just know that you cannot grow flowers on the sand. Tip number 3, you can only crossbreed colors, not species. So you can't make a mum hyacinth. Does that exist in real life? Anyway, you can't crossbreed species, but you can crossbreed colors. So that's how you can, along with there being 54 flowers, look at a list. I used a lot of different guides when I was planning my island. It actually started out, I was just doing the tulips at first because I wanted a couple of the different colors of tulips. I just thought it would be fun. And then they started running rampant. It truly was just an experiment that turned into, oh, let's get them all. Knowing this will allow you to say, okay, well, this section's going to be tulips, this section's going to be mums, this section's going to be hyacinths. I actually did that with my villagers too, which was really, really fun. So I had Cosmos by Mo and kind of went by like their personality types as well and just what like felt right with their ambiance. So do whatever feels right for you, but knowing that there are 54 total and that you can only crossbreed colors, these are the first things you'll really want to know in order to establish any sort of plan if that's something you want to do and if you want to be efficient in this process. Tip number 4. Picked flowers will have to bloom again before breeding. So if you pick them accidentally or purposefully for any reason, you will need to have them bloom again before breeding. Tip number 5, running doesn't destroy. Just like picking flowers, running does the same thing. It just restarts the bloom time. In older Animal Crossing games, you may remember that this is not the case. They would actually destroy the flowers. That is not how it works in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Tip number 6, placing a building, incline, or bridge actually moves the flowers to recycling. This is in my own experience. If you experience something different, please let me know in the comments below. I haven't found any evidence of this online necessarily. I tried to look to find supporting evidence. So just know that they shouldn't disappear, but they should go to recycling. You could maybe even use this as like a quick cleanup for a section if you really needed to, if you put like a whole building on top of a bunch of flowers. So this is something that could be really useful to know. Tip number 7. Crossbreeding helps with color variety and attracting bugs. So what is the purpose behind doing all this? If you are someone who likes to have a goal and likes to have a purpose to what you're doing, of course, like I said in the very first tip, you could just be on this for the journey. But if you do have a purpose behind it, 2 of the main ones would be wanting specific colors for your decor or wanting to attract various bugs. There's evidence that it attracts certain species of bugs that you wouldn't have otherwise. So if you're trying to complete your museum, this might be a really, really good way. Tip number 8, to move flowers, don't pick them up, dig them with a shovel. Okay, so you can't just move your flowers by picking them and planting them. You have to actually have a shovel and dig them up. The golden tools will last the longest. So if you can get your hands on golden tools, that will be the most efficient so you don't have to keep recrafting or purchasing shovels. So that's the end of our facts section. Now we'll move on to the obtaining section. Tip number 9, you can obtain flowers on your island. You may need a ladder for this one. There should be only 1 species of flower blooming on your island naturally. You can use those and plant them in such a way that you can crossbreed your native flower. For tip number 10, upgrade your store. If you upgrade the store with Timmy and Tommy, you should be able to get multiple species of flowers when you have the top upgrade. The colors will change daily. You should always have your native species of flower, but for the other species of flowers, those will change every 2 weeks. This isn't completely confirmed. I researched this one and it seems, and in my experience, I remember them changing a little bit. I would just time travel a few weeks to get there. If you're a time purist on the game, you might have to wait up to 2 weeks for the flowers to change. Now, something you can do to get them a little bit earlier is tip number 11. Get Leif on your Harv's island, okay? He also shows up on your own island once every 2 weeks. So if you aren't able to get him on Harv's island yet, just know that you can have him on your island as well. When he's not on your island and you have him unlocked on Harv's island, you can then go and get flowers from him daily at any time. There's no charge to go to Harv's island, so it's a really good way to have more readily available flowers. And he actually changes his stock once a week. So that can be a really, really good way. So between the store and Leif, you should be pretty set to get all of the types of flowers, especially if you are okay with time traveling. If you're not, again, this will help you do it faster. Mystery islands. If you get Nook Miles tickets and you travel, a lot of people use this for villager hunting, but if you go, you can actually find various flowers on those islands. Another one is in the update from November 2021 when Cap'n was brought in. So if you unlock Cap'n, you can then go once a day to a Cap'n Island and you may find flowers. Personally, this didn't work for me super well. There's so many different types of special islands that Cap'n has that I wouldn't necessarily recommend this being your main source of flowers, but it is cheaper than going to the Mystery Islands, and your miles have pretty much surpassed bells as the source of income that is hardest to come by. So Cap'n Islands are worth 1,000 miles versus the Mystery Islands, which are 2,000 miles for a Nook Miles ticket. So it is actually cheaper, but you can only go once a day. But usually I wasn't finding a lot of flowers on Cap'n Islands. It is possible though. And finally, the best way of obtaining the flowers you need in order to grow flowers all across your island and whatever flowers you need is to obtain seeds from other players. You can also obtain the flowers from other players. If you don't want to grow anything at all, but you just want to have the flowers on your island, the number one best way to get them is to get them from other players. If you don't have friends in Animal Crossing, and quick plug, visit my Twitch stream. Meet everyone in the madness, and we can probably help you out. Okay, tip number 15. There is not an official hybrid growing guide. Don't listen to anyone who tells you there is. There isn't. There are so many guides, and there are some that will say, oh, we use data mining, so we're 100% accurate. They're lying to you, okay? I've used them. A lot of them are really, really good. This is not me saying like, oh, they're awful. No, this is what you have to use is these guides. And I'll link down below my favorites and the ones that I use the most. No, these guides are exactly what you need to use. Just know that tip number 16 is actually use multiple hybrid equation guides, because it doesn't matter how much they tell you it's 100% accurate. I have disproven a lot of the ones that say they're 100% accurate because, again, I grew flowers for months and months and they had a lot of exceptions. For example, that I get the purple windflower. Finally, it was my very first one. I had been trying for months to get this one. So this purple windflower came from a special red and a special blue windflower. It might have even been a regular red. At that point, I hadn't realized one of the tips that we're about to come to, which has to do with using seeded versus red flowers. It was either a special red or a regular red windflower and a blue windflower. And it made a purple windflower, which logically red plus blue equals purple, right? But this guide, which is the one I used the very most and says it was 100% accurate, they said special red plus pink, and pink plus pink to make the purple. I had hundreds of pink windflowers. Roll clip. Never did I get a purple windflower from any of those combinations. I finally got it from a seeded red, a special red, and a blue windflower. And that's how I finally got purple. Okay, tip number 17, have separate sections for different hybrid attempts. If you're trying to grow a pink tulip versus a black tulip, you can separate it out and have the red and the red together and the red and white together. When I say separate, I don't necessarily mean separate like a hard separation with a space in between. Sometimes you will want that for certain hybridizations. You're definitely going to want it between species since those can't crossbreed. But when you're going through one of the lists and you're saying, okay, these are the flowers that I want, make sure that you leave appropriate space on every side so that you're getting the full probability of each flower potentially growing, right? So you can keep them separate. If you have like 2 rows of red tulips so that you're trying to make black, and then you put a row of white tulips on the other side so that you can try to make pink, that works as well. So just make sure that you have them separated out in a way that makes sense for what you're trying to grow. The next step number 17, Right along with this, and is arguably the most important step, as it actually lends to how the flowers are going to crossbreed, which is place them in diagonal 5x5 checkerboard pattern, just like this. When you give it this type of format, the flowers that are diagonal are the ones that are actually going to be crossbred. So they should populate beside them. So you want to leave these spaces so that they can actually populate. Okay, so tip number 19 will actually help you organize for the last 2 tips. If you are having trouble organizing and separating and keeping everything, remembering what you're doing, you come back to your game each time, use signs and fences. So if you're not playing every day and you think you're going to forget, make sure to use signs and fences, and that'll help you designate what you're doing in each section. Tip number 20, you have to water the flowers except when it's raining. You have to water the flowers in order to get them to crossbreed. That is necessary. You'll see sparkles on the flowers when you do, okay? Another really important part of that is to only water fully grown flowers. It's not going to help if you water just a bud. You have to water fully grown flowers. Now, in order to do this the most efficiently, try to get your hands on a golden watering can. These will last the longest, and it's actually necessary for the gold rose. So you will need a golden watering can at some point during this process if you want all 54 flowers. Tip number 23, it takes 4 full days for a full bloom. Now, that's an approximation. I've seen a lot of people say that 4 days is basically the maximum that it will take for a full bloom. So if you want to be safe and you are time traveling to do this, time travel 4 days and your flower will be fully bloomed. One huge time saver that I didn't learn until the very end of my flower island when I was trying to get a blue rose, which is the toughest flower to get in the game. If you do everything right, I think it's under a 2% chance based on data mining evidence, less than 2% chance of you getting it if you do everything right. Yeah. So this tip will make a huge difference if you're struggling to get a certain flower. Again, if you're not a time purist, time travel to a rainy day, then forward a day, then back again in order to see if your watering was successful. If you have a lot of flowers, this will help a ton. Okay, tip number 25. It's actually a rumor, but it's supported by data mining evidence, okay? So that means there is heavy evidence that this is true. If you have friends water your flowers for you, it will actually increase your chances of getting the hybrids. I know when I did this, paired with the next tip, that's how I finally got the blue rose. So I had friends water my flowers, and then tip number 26, put Lily of the Valley near tough attempts. Lily of the Valley, you're going to need a 5-star island for. You can get a 5-star island pretty easily and pretty quickly without having to design a beautiful island. Don't listen to anyone who tells you it's that difficult. You just need a mix of stuff that you purchase from the store, stuff that you purchase with miles, and stuff that you craft, okay? So if you place those all around, intermingled in sections all throughout your island, with all of these flowers, you'll be fine. You should get a 5-star island. That's what happened for me. I had my entire island covered in flowers and had to... This is when tip number 2 came in handy, won't grow on the sand. So I put all of my flowers on the sand that I didn't need to have growing and hybriding. So I would move those flowers, and then I could put little sections all throughout the island of decorations so that I could get that 5-star island, so that I could get the Lily of the Valley. Now, this tip is not supported by data mining evidence, okay? So it is just a rumor. It may or may not be true, but when I put the Lily of the Valley near my special red roses to try to get the blue rose and had friends come water, at that point in time is when I finally got the blue rose. Okay, tip number 27. Some hybrids need to start from seeds for multiple steps. This especially applies to the blue rose. You can't just reuse flowers that are bred from your initial steps. So, for instance, if you're trying to breed an orange rose from red and yellow roses, and then you reuse any yellow roses that populate. So let's say that there's a 50% chance that a red plus a yellow rose combination will make an orange rose. Well, the other 50% is going to potentially produce other flowers. It might produce none, but it could produce other flowers. So let's say that a red and yellow produces another yellow. You can't just reuse that yellow in these steps in order to produce the orange. This may apply to more of them. And the guide that I used the most This only was stated to apply to very few of the actual hybrid combinations. But if you're having trouble with any of the hybrid combinations, I'd recommend starting with seeds and doing that as long as you can instead of reusing anything that's bred from those seeded flowers in those first steps. It might be worth a try if you're having trouble with any of the hybrid combinations. Tip number 28. Once you have 2 of the hybrids that you want, you can actually start a new grid with those. So put them diagonal from each other, water those, and those can produce additional hybrids from the hybrids that you already have. I've also seen people use other flowers surrounding those. So say the step right before it. Personally, I prefer to just put them together and separate, but that might be a better way to do it. If you think it's a better way to do it, comment down below. Tip number 29, we're almost there. For the fastest potential hybridization, quantity is your friend. Again, this is how I ended up with entire flower island because I wanted to grow all 54 and it took my entire island to get there because I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And hopefully this is helping you not make a lot of the same mistakes that I did. Now, our final tip actually has to do with the fact that you might cover a lot of your island in these flowers if you're trying to get all 54, right? So as promised, here's what I did once I finished growing all 54 flowers. I made this really cool rainbow circle in the middle of my island, and I put all 54 flowers in this rainbow garden. I used Canva, and I planned out how I was going to do it. So for the colors that had every type of flower, except of course Lily of the Valley, because that was only in the white section, because there's only one Lily of the Valley and it's white. So for the other colors that had all the rest of the species of flowers, I started with those and built out what I thought would look good, and then pasted that in a circle around with all of the other colors and removed the ones that weren't associated with that color. And then in the very center, I actually put the blue rose, which was the hardest one for me, which was obviously the toughest one for anyone to get percentage-wise. It's the toughest flower. So I put the blue rose right in the center, surrounded by the gold roses and the lilies of the valley, which are also 2 very difficult ones to obtain, very unique and rare ones. And then everything else was leading up to that. So you might find a way that you want to do like color. Maybe you want to do, a color theme on your island. Maybe you want to put all the species together. Maybe you want to do something for each of your villagers. There's all sorts of things you can do. For me, I had an entire island, every inch of the island covered in flowers, other than the stuff that made it 5-star, and then had it all just congregate in on this center section with a rainbow field of flowers. It was really, really cool. It was an experience. Okay, final tip. If you end up with way too many flowers, you aren't going to want to just restart if you do want to restart your island, you had fun with the journey, you're done, go for it. But if you want to clean up the flowers in the fastest possible way, get help. Find some friends. Get friends to come over and help you dig up every single flower. And you can offer your extra flowers to other people. It's the beauty of having friends in Animal Crossing. And again, if you don't have friends in Animal Crossing, feel free to follow me on Twitch. I do live streams there. We would love to have you in the community playing Animal Crossing with us, sharing more than just flowers. We share all sorts of good tips and ideas. A lot of these things I did learn from my community who recommended them and we tested them out. So we would love to have you. So it's official. You're now an Animal Crossing New Horizons flower expert. This is my very first YouTube video, so it means so much that you made it to the end. And since you did, it could legitimately change my life if you liked and subscribed so that I can keep making these and other people will see them. So until next time, bye!